Welcome everybody, and we are so grateful to Swami Atma Shraddhananda Ji Maharaj Ji, Secretary Ramakrishna Mission, Kanpur, India, Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh, India. Last time also he has been kind enough to provide us with his lecture, and that time we had a series of 51 lectures on the in the wake of pandemic. We wanted to have we wanted to have something which gives confidence to the people, which gives mental and spiritual sustenance, and that was a very successful series of lectures. Monks from the world over, from Ramakrishna order, gave their Amrit Vanis, and we had a lot of takeaways from that. The present series is that, Sri Ramakrishna's concept of learning, that is, we learn till we, so long as we live. We keep learning so long as we live. In Bengali, we call it Jabat Bachi Tavat Sikhi. So, under this Sri Ramakrishna's concept of learning, we had the first lecture by Swami Puttakambarananda Ji. Now we are so grateful to Swami Atma Shraddhananda Ji for blessing us with his second lecture. And the topic of the lecture is very, very instructive and very, very interesting and very, very insightful under the concept of the education, Sri Ramakrishna's concept of education, Ramakrishna Mission, and its holistic approach to spiritual life. So now I would request our spiritual in charge and our minister in charge, Swami Udarananda Ji Maharaj, to kindly give a few words and also introduce Swami Atma Shraddhananda Ji Maharaj. So, Swami Udarananda Ji Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Nirvada. I, on the behalf of Ramakrishna Vedanta Society of the Philippines, welcome you all. I'm very happy to see so many people participating. Even though the open sessions have started many places, we have decided to take the advantage of this technological welfare and use to our advantage. That is why we have decided to continue this as long as possible, these online classes, because we got a very positive response from many people. So this time, once we were planning that accidentally or coincidentally, this year happens to be 125th foundation from anniversary of foundation ceremony of the Ramakrishna order. So since we have celebrated 125 years, we wish to celebrate this whole year long, this occasion. And this will be our medium to tell the people about the Ramakrishna order, what it is doing for the society, and what is the role of Ramakrishna Mission outside India especially. Because in India, many people know and they are very well aware what Ramakrishna is doing. But outside India, very few people know what as a monk we are doing for the society, how we are helping the society, how we can help the society. So that is one idea. And so we were thinking that, keeping that idea as a base, we decided the first series will be the concept of education by Sri Ramakrishna. Education is not what we believe that university education means. Once university education is over, everything is over. No, Sri Ramakrishna believed that as long as we live, we learn. And that is he showed in his life. He was not formally educated, but all his education and knowledge he gathered from different sources in various different ways. So that is he wanted us also to follow. So keeping that as a base of our lecture, the main point of our lecture, foundation of our lecture, we have started this series. I am sure everybody will be greatly benefited by the same. Swami Atma Shraddhananda Ji, before giving any introduction, he has been my mentor from my childhood, and he has continuing to help me even now. Whenever I need some help, I always consult him. That is the most important introduction that I can give. Secondly, he was the editor of our English monthly journal called Vedanta's Kesari. He has written many books, and he is a very well-known speaker all around India. And we are very lucky to have him here in our midst. So I thank Maharaj for kindly accepting our request and agreeing to speak. We are very much honored as well as very, very happy, Maharaj. Keep us blessed by your talk. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Maharaj, for kindly accepting our request to give this talk. Thank you once again, Maharaj. The mic is yours.
Do I begin now?
Yes, yes, Maharaji. Yes, Maharaji.
So, thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction, Swami Udarananda ji and Nirmalda ji, and my greetings to all the people who are online listening to this talk. Before I begin, let me chant the Pranama mantra of Thakurma Swamiji, as is our custom. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnan Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So, Swami Udarananda ji, while introducing today's subject, he mentioned about the Ramakrishna mission, the character of its activities, and the type of activities it takes up, and how many people are not aware of the mission's multifarious activities, and also the philosophy for which it works. And it's very apt that on this 125th anniversary of the foundation of the Ramakrishna Mission, we are having this series. Before I take up the subject in more details, I'll give a in few sentences, a brief overview of the activities of the Kanpur centers, because that will give you an idea as to how the Ramakrishna Mission carries on its activities. Say, this ashram from where I am speaking from, it is in Uttar Pradesh, and it is the largest state in India, in fact in the world. It has got a population of more than 23 or 24 crores, the equivalent to some countries. And Kanpur is the second largest city with over 50 to 60 lakh population. And our ashram here is quite old. In 1936, Swami Vijnanananda ji, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, a direct disciple, he laid the foundation for this ashram. So in last 85 years, the ashram has passed through all these periods of growth and development and so many things. So now our activities, that will give an idea as to how the Ramakrishna Mission works. So it's not a very huge center in comparison with many other Ramakrishna Mission centers in India. So area-wise, it is around an acre and a half land, and we have a small temple, the foundation for which was laid by Swami Vijnanananda ji, and where we have regular puja, arati, bhajans, lectures, and we have a public library with a reading room where for the students, around 60 to 70 students come every day to study there, and we have a lecture hall where occasionally we hold programs, and a charitable dispensary where we give free medical care to only OPD and around 70 to 80 people daily. And we have a school, a high school from class 6 to class 10 with over 450 students. Besides that, we have classes for the poor children in the evening, relief activities, and a bookstall for selling books on Ramakrishna Vivekananda, and a few other activities. So in the Ramakrishna Mission, we have the combination of work and worship. We have the work going on in the form of the seva, the services for the benefit of the society. We have the educational services, so to say. We have the medical services. We have spiritual services, so to say. And alongside, we have our own meditative lives. We monks here, like any other center of the Ramakrishna Mission, we get up in the morning, try to do our morning ritual of meditation and prayer, And again, in the evening, we attend the evening arati and be part of the spiritual discussions. We every day we read as part of our evening arati. We read a few pages from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna in Hindi, of course. That's the language spoken here. And we have the Ramnam Sankirtan and the Sundarkand part and a number of other spiritual activities. So I think this summarizes how the Ramakrishna mission works. It's a combination of spirituality and practical social service in a spirit of worship. It's not like some NGO doing some activity. Well, you might see it as an NGO from outside, but inside, if you go, it's not just an NGO. It's a spiritual movement with so many dedicated people, very insightful in their thinking, in their commitment, and that's how the Ramakrishna mission goes on. And this is the subject for today's discussion. We have a holistic approach to spirituality as practiced in the Ramakrishna order. As you know, the Ramakrishna mission is announced in 125 years back. It started, but then it's not just that a formal starting in 1897. Even before that, around 10 years before that, when Sri Ramakrishna was alive, he passed away in 1886. So he had laid foundation for what we try to follow through his life, through his example, and through his teachings. So we have the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, his life, his experiences, his realizations as the core on which the rest of all things are built up. So we have Sri Ramakrishna, we have Holy Mother and Swami Vivekananda and the direct disciples, and a whole spiritual tradition of 125 plus years. What is the holistic spirituality that we have in the topic? Uh, Holistic spirituality, which means it's very inclusive. Uh, Swami Vivekananda gave a series of talks on Raj Yoga. And at the beginning of those talks, he gave kind of four mantras or formulas, which is what holistic spirituality is all about. First of all, he set up the goal, clarified the goal of spirituality. He said each soul is potentially divine. This is the goal. We must remember that we are all potentially divine. So right now we may have an expression of divine and non-divine aspects of our personality. So divine means we have kindness, we have goodness, we have self-control, we have unselfishness, etc. And we have the non-divine aspect of our personality, where we have anger, greed, lust, jealousy, we have unnecessary desires. So the mixture of these two is what we call as the present human personality. Swami Vivekananda placed this as the goal before us, that let us first of all remember that we are not just mixture of these two, though this is what the practical truth about us is, but ultimately, the final, the supreme goal of our life is to manifest the divine aspect of our personality. So divinity is what the goal of human life is. So let me further try to explain this. So it's the human life. It's not the animals which are finally looking at this goal. For instance, an animal doesn't have the desire to become great. An animal is an animal. He just follows his animal nature. I was listening to a very interesting talk by a professor in Bangalore a couple of weeks back. He made a very moot point. He said, look at the animals. Look at a lion, look at a dog, look at a cat. So what do you see in them? They behave exactly as they should behave. A lion behaves like a lion, and a cat behaves like a cat, and a dog behaves like a dog. A lion does not take up grass to eat, nor does a cow takes up the meat to eat. They have their own nature, their own their own whole biological system, which has been put in order by the nature, and they follow it. But look at man. Man is man, but not all the time he behaves like a man. Many times he behaves like an animal. You come across the news, the crime news, the news of terror, the news of violence and death and exploitation which connected with the human beings. So you naturally think of it: is human being meant to be that? And what is human? Holy Mother Sarada Devi used to say, if a human being does not have compassion, is he a human at all? So compassion, kindness, gentleness, this is what makes us human. And ultimately, if we go to the very goal of our human life, it is not just to become worldly wise or to have material progress, which can be the goal of human life. It is the spiritual growth, the spiritual virtues growing in us, which make us truly human. Otherwise, we are partly human and partly animal. Swamiji mentions this in one of his writings. So the goal of human life, first of all, is to remember that each soul is potentially divine. Second thing which he said, the goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature, internal and external. So we have a nature in which we live. We all have a nature. We are made of nature. We are given birth by nature. Our parents gave birth to us, and they are just part of the nature scheme. And their parents gave birth to them, and they are also part of the nature scheme. And it has been going on. We don't know how long, and it will go on. We do not know how long. So we are part of nature. So whereas Swamiji says the goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature, internal and external. So internal nature, our internal nature means our mind, our inner desires, our thoughts, our emotions. We must learn to control them, or in a more practical sense, we must try to train them. We must train our emotions. Now, how much of problems come because of the emotional instability of the human beings? Or think of the wrong notions a person may have in his mind about what is right, what is wrong. So the internal nature has to be controlled. Again, in Raja Yoga lectures of Swami Vivekananda, he mentions that we should be able to look at or try to understand how, even from a small seed level, from a very subtle level, our thoughts grow, our impulses grow, and they become very big. For instance, anger is coming to you. You see from a distance, there anger is coming. Then comes anger nearer to you. Yes, anger is very near to me. Then I become anger. Anger becomes so identified, or I become identified with this wave coming from my mind, the wave of anger, that I can't think anything beyond. So, this internal nature has to be controlled or to be trained. Similarly, external nature. External nature means our body has to be brought into under certain controls. Similarly, our environment, the ecosystem in which we live, it should be conducive to our spiritual life. For instance, we live under some governance, some administration, or we live under certain rules, institutions that should be all conducive for the manifestation of the divinity. So, controlling of the internal and external nature in order to manifest our divine virtues, our divinity. This is the second thing which Swamiji has spoken of. Third thing, which is again very important, and we are coming to the very core of our the subject today, which he says the goal is to manifest this divine nature, this divinity, by controlling nature, internal and external. Third one is do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or two or all of these, and be free. So there are four things Swamiji has mentioned here as tools or pathways for manifesting this divinity. It says, do this either by work. By work is meant not doing any work is what is meant here. It is meant with the right motivation, with the right attitude, carrying on our work, whatever work we do. So it's a huge subject as to what is work. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, there is a verse which says, Nahi dehabhritam shakyam karmanya akarmanya. You cannot be without action um, if you have a human body. You see, if a person is all the time lying down in his bed, either he is sick or he is something abnormal. So activity at a very physical level is necessary for the life to go on. Similarly, mentally we must be very active. Not only that, the action that we do, the work that we do, it should be conducive for our inner and outer growth. We must not be doing in a uh, very aimless work. There should be a specific goal, specific pathway to which we are going. But the work has to be done with higher and higher motives. So we begin with a lower motive. For instance, somebody wants only money, somebody wants only fame, somebody says, I like to have a post, for that I will work. In a practical world, you have the place for all this. But when it comes to doing work as a spiritual discipline, as Swamiji has mentioned here, it means doing action, doing work or karma as a yoga. When action is done without attachment, which means without seeking any personal glory in that, because you have developed certain amount of detachment to the worldly things, you have got a higher motive in life, we cannot really grow spiritually. So we need to develop that higher goal. In the Bhagavad Gita, again it comes, the 6th chapter, Yogina karma kurvantu sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye. So the seekers of spiritual illumination, they do activity, they take up action as a means for self-purification, atma shuddhaye. Now, this is the first thing that can we can take up work as a means for self-purification, which means we take up action as an expression of our bhakti, as an expression of devotion to God, or as an expression of the jnana or the knowledge of the Brahman. So we will come to that later further. So for time being, let's keep this in mind. So do this by work means to do this by karma yoga. The first thing Swamiji says. Or do this by knowledge. Do this by jnana, which means you manifest your divine nature by constant inner use of viveka. So viveka shakti, you see, we have a power of viveka in us. Viveka is not exactly like any thinking. Any thinking cannot be classified as viveka. Viveka or discernment or discrimination in the English translations really means it's a very specific faculty of the mind, which is born only when we have certain sense of detachment, certain sense of looking beyond our immediate goals. So that is how Viveka is born. In fact, there is a verse in the Ramcharitmanas, which is, the Rama's story in Hindi, which is read and expounded by, I would say, crores of people here in North India. There he says, Binu Satsanga Vivek na hoi, Ram Kripa Binu Sulabha na soi. Without satsang, without holy company, you cannot develop Viveka. And without Viveka, you cannot, and that is found only by the grace of the Lord. By having a satsang, a holy company, we develop Viveka. So that Viveka helps us to know who we really are. Who am I? Am I this body? Am I the various limbs of the body or various functions of the body? What's my real identity? Am I a mind? Am I my intellect? Am I the various accomplishments that I have to my credit? Say, for instance, I am a chairman somewhere, or I was a chairman, or I was some officer, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor. These are all identities we all have. We also have identities like, in a lighter sense, we have an OTP identity. OTP. Something you buy from Amazon and it comes and says, tell me your OTP. That's also an identity. In India, we have this Aadhaar card as an identity. There are numerous identities. Even our train ticket is an identity. Our flight ticket is an identity. But these identities, if we look at it, they are so evanescent, so passing. That's not our real identity. So, what's our real identity? So our scriptures have explained it very deep, and they said we are essentially divine. We are Atman. We have, as if put on various clothes. They call it koshas on us. Say in winter here in Kanpur and some other countries, other places in northern India, it becomes very cold. Now it's very hot. It becomes very cold, and you put on two, three, four sweaters. It's really cold. So you get sometimes you wonder where I am in the midst of these sweaters. And similarly, our identity. We have put on so many identities. From childhood to till now, we have had so many identities. When we were in school, we said class 1 to class 12, we had 12 identities. He is a class 5 boy or a girl. He is a class 10 boy or a girl. These are identities. So identities keep changing. But behind that, there is some identity which never changes. And to understand that and to carry that consciousness in our day-to-day life is called Jnana Yoga. Practice of Viveka, practice of Vairagya, and self-analysis as to who am I. And as we understand, as we explain our divine nature, we start manifesting our divine virtues. We become less and less angry, less and less attached to things, various, the inner urges that we have, which make us go towards an animal nature, they become less and less intense. Till we know that finally that we are not under their hold at all. And that's the highest goal that is kept before us as the goal of spirituality. So the first thing we have is work or karma yoga, and the second one is knowledge or it is the jnana yoga. Then we have the third one, which is very important. That is called the Bhakti Yoga. So what is Bhakti Yoga? It is giving a God word or a divine direction to our own emotions. So a lot of people, they look upon God as their own. They no longer debate about whether God is there or not. They think God is there. They are convinced of it. And not only that, they have certain attitude towards God. For instance, in Sanatana Dharma, we have the idea of Gopala Krishna or baby Gopal. Here in Vrindavan area, Vrindavan and Mathura area, we have the idea of Laddu Gopal. So many people hold a small image of Gopal or Krishna in a very small image in a small box, and they carry it around. They think it's their baby. God is their baby. So baby requires now rest. The baby has to be fed. So for a person who is not into this idea of devotion, he may wonder at it. He says, is he normal? You may think what sort of thing it is doing. But if you look at a serious and a very well-meaning devotees in this path, you will say that they are trying to practice the presence of God in their life. They are trying to direct their emotion towards God. So this is what bhakti means. The word bhakti itself means bhaja sevayam. The very idea of bhakti comes from bhaj, bhaja dhatu. Bhaj is a root word which means to serve. So you are serving the Lord. Now, Sri Ramakrishna makes a beautiful statement. He says, what is the difference between bhakti and jnana? Between knowledge that I am Atman and knowledge that I am a devotee, I am worshipping God. So he says it's just like you have got sugar before you. If you say, I will think so deeply about sugar that I will become sugar, That's called jnana. That I try to think of Atman, I try to analyze my mind. So I discover that I am not different from the Atman which I am speaking of. So it's not that when I speak of Atman, I am speaking some third person. I am speaking about myself, which means each one of us. So we have this idea of the Atman becoming one with Brahman, becoming one and with sugar, or I want to enjoy sugar, enjoying sugar, which means enjoying the glories of the Lord, thinking about Him, singing about Him, and worshipping Him in various ways. So that's how the one way of differentiating knowledge and devotion comes. This is the third thing. Then he says, uh, or you do it with psychic control. Do this by work or worship or philosophy or psychic control. So, what is psychic control here? Psychic control refers to Raja Yoga or meditation, the path of meditation. Every day we set apart some time, we try to meditate on a divine reality within us. We try to calm the mind, detach the mind from so many external things into which it gets lost. For instance, a person who never meditates and he is into the financial market. So the financial market's ups and downs, he becomes so attached to that. Even while sleeping at night, he's thinking about them. The moment he gets up in the morning, he thinks of what's the rate in the share market, and so on and so forth. So he's as if he is, um, going in a flow of events. He has become one with that. Whereas a person who meditates, he takes a time out. He kinds of relaxes himself and detaches himself from this and tries to meditate on his divine self. And that, of course, requires that he should, otherwise, when he's not meditating, he should take care of life. He should not be telling lies. He should not be behaving in a wrong way. This is called Yama and Niyama in Raja Yoga. The fourth one is called Raja Yoga, the or Dhyana Yoga. So where you are living a morally strong life, and that's very conducive, very necessary as a precondition for right kind of meditation. And meditation also helps us to cultivate those virtues, the moral virtues also. So we have these four paths before us: or work, or worship, or philosophy, or psychic control. So put it in the terms of yoga. It is work means karma yoga, worship is bhakti yoga, philosophy is jnana yoga, and psychic control is raj yoga. So we have these four yogas before us. And finally, he says, uh, do this either by one or two, or by all of these, and be free. So freedom or manifesting our divinity is a goal of spirituality. And in one of his talks, given in New York in 1895, called Inspired Talk, Swami Vivekananda mentions, he says, you take up one yoga as your mainstay and other yogas as the yogas which are kind of helping you around. So let's say a person takes up Bhakti Yoga as his mainstay. He has the devotional aspect, emotional aspect very strong. And then he also takes care of the Karma Yoga, which means whatever action he does it as a seva to his Lord. And then he also practices Jnana Yoga, and he also practices some meditation, Jnana Yoga. Or somebody pays more attention to Karma Yoga. So but alongside he carries that consciousness of Bhakti and Jnana and Raja Yoga also. So combination of these four is what is actually meant when we say we are speaking of the holistic approach to spirituality. The last sentence in that series Swami Vivekananda mentions is that um, temples, rituals, dogmas, these are but secondary details. They are all secondary details. The primary detail is, primary focus is how do we develop how well we develop ourselves, these qualities or grow in these various yogas. Now, you look at the Ramakrishna Mission's logo, emblem. Emblem is a very important thing that we have in Ramakrishna mission. It was original thing was designed by Swami Vivekananda. If you read the seventh volume of the complete works, there you find that Swamiji mentions this. He says to one of his disciples that I have tried to put these ideas in the form of this emblem. So the emblem, which is a symbol of the mission or a logo of the mission, it has got these four yogas depicted very well there. Those of you who know about it can recall that it is encircled by a kind of a snake with the hood of the snake at the top. It's a circle with a hood of the snake at the top. There you have in this hood or the circle, it actually represents Kundalani Shakti. It is said that the traditional way that we have of understanding the divinity present in all of us. We say that we have a divine power kind of a thing, which is at the base of the spine. And as we live our holy life, a life of purity, a life of meditation, it slowly gets awakened. There are some people who say, let us try to awaken it very fast. The Ramakrishna mission doesn't believe in that. He says, let's go very slow about it. Because once it gets wakened up, it can cause problem. Swami Vivekananda himself has mentioned that in one of his, after the lectures, he says that after my lecture, there are some people whose spiritual consciousness or kundalini had been awakened. But later on, I found that they had not led very pure lives earlier. So, because of that, it did not really help them. Not only that, it did not help them, it actually made them more, animalistic. So, it's very important that we should carry on our moral practices and spiritual practices side by side. If you say, oh, okay, I will do my spiritual practice, I will repeat God's name or do some singing or chanting, it's fine. But along with that, we should also be having the idea of being truthful, being honest in our dealings, being kind, being humble, developing all those virtues which are spoken of in the Yoga Sutras. So, anyway, the first one is this circle. This represents Raj Yoga because it represents the meditative aspect of life. It represents the Raj Yoga. Then, second thing that you see in this emblem is that there is water, a water, very turbulent water. It represents the action or karma yoga. And then along with that, we have the lotus. Lotus represents that it has the lotus represents generally purity. It represents non-attachment. It represents that a sense of devotion in our life. It is said that we in India, in our Sanatana Dharma, whenever we pray to Lord, we say, "Oh Lord, you are sitting in my lotus heart," or "I have devotion to your lotus feet." Lotus feet, because lotus represents detachment. It is there in the mud. The lotus grows in mud, but it is not attached by mud. Padma Patram Ivambhasaha, the Gita says. It is Padma Patra Vivambhasa. It is like water, a thing which is not attached to water. So it is very nice way of representing devotion. It also represents beauty, holiness. So this is actually Bhakti Yoga. So we have the Karma Yoga in the form of water. We have the Raj Yoga in the form of the snake, encircling snake, and we have the lotus in the form of the lotus, the Bhakti Yoga in the form of lotus. And then we have the rising sun behind, which is representing the Jnana Yoga. And in the midst of all this, there is a swan. Now, swan represents our own divine nature or the Brahman. In the one of the scriptures, God is represented as, you know, swan. There is a verse from the Upanishads. It is known as the Hamsa Gayatri. It is, praise in praise of Hamsa, or swan, which again represents God. It says, Om Hamsa Hamsaya Vidmahe Paramahamsaya Dhimahi Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat. May we know the light of lights, for that we meditate on the supreme light. May the divine light impel us towards that. Impel us towards that. So if you see the symbol of the Ramakrishna mission, you have below that written Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat, which is from the Hamsa Gayatri. So Hamsa is also represented as representing light and knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam represents God as Hamsa, so as Hamsa avatar. So if you look at the whole thing, if you summarize this whole thing, it is the Jnana, Bhakti, Karma Yoga, and Raj Yoga. A combination of all these leads to the inner awakening, which leads to God realization. So Swami Vivekananda said that by combination of these four yogas, one becomes fulfilled. One attains to what is we call as God. He makes a statement one place. He says, if there is God, we must see Him. If there is soul, we must perceive it. So it's not just it is written in some book that there is God and I should believe it. I should try to practice it in life. I should try to realize that in life. So this practical approach to spirituality is very essential. Now, sometimes people say, is jnana and bhakti, knowledge and devotion, should, don't you think they are two separate things? There are some people who have that line of thinking. To which I would refer to one of the verses from a traditional, Sanskrit thing. It says, "Jnanasya parakashta saiva bhaktiriti smrta bhaktestuya parakashta saiva jnanam prakirtitam." It's a very interesting statement. It says that which is the summit of jnana, that is called bhakti. That which is the summit of jnana is called bhakti, and that which is the summit of bhakti, that is called jnana. And now, let me also try to explain these four yogas through a kind of a poetic expression. This again is told by one of the saints. He says, it is like we are all in this world and God is playing with us. And He has, as if covered a veil of avidya over us, and that He has put a cover upon it, upon Himself, which means we are not seeing God around us. We are seeing limited human beings, limited circumstances, limitations in various ways around us. And the wheel itself, although it is limited, it's very charming. It is a very, it is having a lot of attractive images about it, fascinating scenes, and very pleasant moments on it. But then a time comes when suddenly the human beings wake up. They wake up from just enjoying those things. Again, I would like to quote Tulsidas ji. Tulsidas says, Janaki Shaki Kripa, Jagavati Sujan Jeev, Jagi Tyagi Mudhata, Anurag Shri Hare. He says that by the grace of Rama, one day the Jiva wakes up, and then he no longer wants to be asleep in the sleep of ignorance. He's looking for the Lord. He's looking for higher life, and that awakening is very essential for any such growth. When such a growth, such a awakening happens, then we find that this wheel is not outside actually. It's not that the God has put the wheel. The wheel has been put on our own mind. It's the mind which has to be purified. So when we say that we have to remove the wheel from our mind, that is called Raj Yoga, which means through meditation and concentration, we try to still the mind and see the divinity within. Again, in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, there is a verse which says that one of the sutras says that when the mind becomes absolutely calm, it is like if you have got, let's say that you are boiling water in a pot and you have kept it in your cooking oven, and then you find a lot of bubbles over it. You don't know what's there below it. Then you remove, you make it, sim it, and then you finally close down the flame. Then slowly the water calms down, and then you see at the bottom of it, that is the bottom of the pot there. It's all clean there. Likewise, when the mind becomes still and calm, it goes deep into that and discovers its own divine nature. Now we are speaking of this wheel which Lord has put on Himself, and there are some people who says no, Lord is hiding behind the wheel. So let me praise Him, let me call Him, let Him say, "Oh Lord, please reveal Yourself. Oh divinity, please come out. Why are you hiding yourself?" That prayer, that seeking, that's called Bhakti Yoga. That's a way of approaching God in the path of devotion. Then finally, there are also people who want to tear off that wheel by force. That tearing off is called philosophy or philosophical analysis. He says, "No, I am not this. I'm not this body and mind alone. I'm not the various stages of my body and mind. I am that pure divine light." So whichever way we follow, whether we follow bhakti or jnana, or whether we follow Raja Yoga or Karma Yoga, we are essentially trying to progress towards that divine manifestation of our being. This is the holistic approach which we, the Ramakrishna Mission, try to follow. In a more practical sense, we have the idea of bhakti through the ritualistic worship. You know, Sri Ramakrishna spoke about ritualistic worship. It's very important. But then it is like also like a maze, bulbulaya. You may get caught in that. You may get caught in a bulbulaya, which means you do not know whether this ritual should be done or not, or you think that ritual alone is everything. Ritual is only a pathway. It's not the end in itself. It's just like you have got a finger, and that finger is pointing towards the moon. Now, finger is not the moon. It's only pointing to that. Similarly, rituals can be helpful. They are of a great help, but then we must be able to follow them very meaningfully. So we have the idea of bhakti or ritualistic worship or singing or repetition of God's name. That's one practice that we have. Then we have the service activities, doing our actions, not only the large scale public service activities like running a school or running a hospital, which is important, of course, but then even smaller things, even serving water. Very recently, our ashram here, we organized a distribution of sweet water, sharbat, cold sharbat, to the passerbys. So every day around 600 to 700 people would get that. So you can do it as a form of worship to the Lord. Though you are doing action, you are doing service, because it's very hot here. So that serving helped in their thirst getting appeased to some extent. Then you have also the idea of whatever actions we do as worship, and we also have the idea of discussions or the knowledge traditions in our life. So you read Bhagavad Gita, you read Upanishads, you chant them, you try to dwell upon the meaning of these great scriptures and try to practice them in your life. say I'm not the body, I am the Atman, Aham Brahmasmi, that kind of feeling, that kind of analysis. You see, there are times when we are under so much of pressure of so many types. Years ago, I met a young person, not very young, he was in his 30s. He had he had autism. You know, autism is a disease affecting the nervous system. The person who has the autism, he might look dull, he might look uncontrollable, even abnormal, but deep within him, he has a very sharp mind, and he's a good person. But it takes a long time for people to recognize that autistic people really that way. From a human angle, we feel very compassionate towards them. So this person had come. He was with his father, and he said that sometimes, you know, he had learned how to read and write, thanks to and congrats to his parents who had worked very hard to teach him. He said, I read the Jnana Yoga lectures of Swami Vivekananda, and I'm deeply moved. And sometimes he sits aside at night and think over it. What sort of body do I have? What sort of person I have become? I know I have a defective nervous system. I know I have this disease, but then I also know I know that I am separate from it. I am divine. See how wonderfully it has helped him. Jnana Yoga approach to life. Similarly, Karma Yoga. Some people are very active by nature. So you do it as an action, as a seva. Then you have the bhakti, you have got the jnana. Various approaches finally lead to one thing, which is the realization of the divine, realization of our divine nature. So that is how we can possibly think of the a holistic approach to spirituality in the Ramakrishna tradition. So with this, I close. Thank you very much for your listening. Namaste.
Pranam and thank you very much, Atma Shraddhananda Ji Maharaj Ji. You have always been so kind and gracious. And we take this opportunity to profusely thank Swami Baneshananda Ji Maharaj to have kindly joined all the way from Berlin. And he specifically mentioned that he was very keen to listen to Swami Atma Shraddhananda Ji, remembering his past connection. And thank you very much, Baneshananda Ji Maharaj. And now I would request our members, if they have any observation or any question or any doubt, they may kindly ask Maharaj Ji. Let us introduce and let us be precise. And let us, one person will speak at a time, so that there is no confusion or noise. Thank you very much. So the first questionnaire is most welcome. Aparna ji, would you like to start?
Maharaj is very beautiful lecture. Nirmal ji, I don't have any question because, but I like the example at the end of you that give the autism person. See, like a human being, we have everything, all body and everything, and still we are craving for so many times. We can't do meditation, we can't do this, we can't do that. And I really moved to hear the story of that autism person. Okay, how he is thinking about his body and his everything. It's really beautiful, right? Uh, God give us everything, still we have give all excuses not to do meditation, prayer or reading or anything else. But you are lacking something else in the life, then you can realize what you are lacking in your life. Beautiful lecture, Maharaji. Very beautiful lecture. Thank you very much.
Shirish, do you have anything to ask? Shirish, are you there? Dr. Kalpana Sarkar, do you want to ask anything?
Pranam Maharaj, it is a beautiful lecture and you have analyzed everything very nicely. But I have a question that these four yogas all I think also depend on the age and stages of life. When we are young, at that time we are very busy to learn something and to do something. But after doing this, after our retirement, when we get more time for our own self, then usually we converted ourselves to the Bhakti Yoga more than the previous Karma Yoga and the Jnana Yoga. It is my observation of my life. But I want to know from you whether it is really exists in all the person, the yoga and the ages, stages of life.
Yes, you're right. It is partly very true that when we are young, we want to be more active, and which is quite natural and acceptable. But as we grow, we understand it all happens by Lord's will. So I remember Swami Harshanandaji Maharaj, who is no more. 2 years ago, Maharaj passed away, around a year and a half. So he used to mention this. He says, you see, the very scheme of the Bhagavad Gita is like that. In the Bhagavad Gita, first two chapters, if you read, Sri Krishna is kind of scolding Arjuna. He's saying, what are you doing that you will not fight the battle? You must fight the battle. And you should not run away from the various issues of life. He tries to, wake him up. And Klaibyam masmagamah partha naitattvayupapadyate kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tatto uttishta parantapa, he says, the second chapter. Then, in the last chapter, Sri Krishna tells, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam praja. Now you give up everything and take refuge in me. So this is how our life is. So he used to make fun like that, Swami Harshanandaji. You see, just like an engine. The engine is climbing up a hill and it is kind of a singing. He would put it in a singing style and says, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And then as it starts climbing up and up and up, he starts understanding how difficult it is. And then he starts saying, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could. So that's about life, we begin like that. But then these four yogas are actually present in our lives throughout. So even when you are in retirement age of your life, you still have to do all your actions as an offering to the Lord. It becomes a karma yoga, and we still have the, of course, we depend upon devotion, and but still we have to think about our divine nature again and again. That's very essential part of our spiritual life, especially in the Vedanta tradition. And we also try to meditate daily. So the four yogas do come back to us, but when we are young, we are definitely, in commensurate with our energy and that state of life, we want to work more, and that's quite acceptable.
Thank you, Maharaji. Uh, any further question? Anil ji, Anil Kumar Sasdeva, would you like to ask something from Maharaj ji? Kasturi, you have anything to say?
Yes, Nimada. A lovely, lovely lecture, Maharaji. It was a pleasure listening to you. I have a small query. I have sometimes seen some people who are into spiritual ways of life doing their practices very earnestly throughout life. But somehow I feel that this practice does not show in their attitude. They are still very greedy or they don't have control over anger. They don't have they are still very jealous. And sometimes I fail to understand if somebody is in a spiritual way for a long, long time. These realizations should reflect on their behavior. Why it does not happen?
Is it because what you were mentioning as if a kundalini is awakened and they have not had a life which was very just and fair, these special powers that they get, uh, does it increase their intrinsic nature of anger, hatred, whatever negative qualities it? That's a question I have in my mind.
Now, if you look at the popular Sri Ramakrishna, there is a small instance there. It is said that
Yes.
once somebody comes to Sri Ramakrishna, I think it is Balram Bose, and there is a kind of questioning or a conversation that's happening between him and Sri Ramakrishna. And Balram Bose's father is sitting nearby. He's counting his beads. So Sri Ramakrishna says, look, it tells Balram Bose, look at your father, how much meditation he is doing. But Balram Bose replies, but sir, it is uh, tied to the corner of the shore. Now, there is a story behind it. The story of the behind is he has actually not. He says that he has not lifted his anchor. Anchor, you have in the boat the anchor. So the story is this, which is given by Swami Yatishwaranandaji in his teachings. He says, if you there are some people who were drunk. They got into a boat. It was late in the night. They took up oars and started rowing the boat. And possibly whole night they have rowed the boat. But in the morning when they looked around, that they had just not gone any far. They're still wherever they are. Why? Because they had forgotten to remove the anchor or the rope which was tying them to the shore. The same way we keep doing our spiritual practices, but if we don't lift our anchors, if we don't give up our attachments, so our spiritual practices do not take us very far. So there are people who still have strong attachments. Giving up attachment is very essential. In the Yoga Sutras, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Upanishads, repeatedly practice of detachment is very much emphasized. So they don't try to uh, practice detachment. So they still feel that their likes and dislikes are very strong. But when they grow up, when they make some change in their life, there is a definite coming away from these lower tendencies. So in the 15th chapter of the Gita, it says Asanga Shastrena Dridena Chittva. You must have the Asanga Shastra. So you see the Shastra is there in the hands of various gods and goddesses. In the Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu, it is the Chakra, Sudarshan Chakra. Or Ma Kali, there is the Khadga. And different gods have got different Shastra. So what is the Shastra which human beings have? It is the Asanga Shastra, which means detachment. Sri Ramakrishna repeatedly spoke of detachment. So, what's the meaning of detachment? So, one important meaning of detachment is that I learn to become less emphatic about my likes and my dislikes. It's not just about my clothings and my food habits and a few other things which I am speaking of. It is in a larger sense. It's all connected with our ego. It's our ego which is very displeased, our ego which is very much pleased. So there is a Sanskrit saying which says, Buddhehe phalam to anagrahaha. When the buddhi grows up, when there is a real growth in our intellect, we become less prejudiced, less attached to things. Once we do that, anger will come down, greed will come down, and all the lower tendencies which bind us to this world, they will also come down.
If
Thank
I
you.
am allowed, I can ask Maharaj one question.
Sure, sure, sure.
Maharaj, it is not definitely a question, but it is a observation in my life. My my granddaughter lives in USA with my uh, daughter, and she refused. My daughter said she refused to come to India, and particularly to my house, though she is very fond of me. So my daughter asked, "What is the reason?" Because he told that Dida always says that in everybody there is God, but Dida never practiced that. So my daughter said, what she does? Well, she took food with us in the dining table and allowed the person who are working in the house in the kitchen. If she allows them to sit with us in the dining table, only then I can go. Then I was very much upset. I said, yes, really, this is a very pertinent question. Then I request my maids, please, you sit with me. Otherwise, my granddaughter will not come to visit me. But they never accepted that. They said, no, we can't, we never. Then we thought we will go to the restaurant with them, and then she will be relieved. But even then, they refused. In that occasion, this is my defect, I can understand. But what should I do?
Hello.
Yes.
Ah, yes. It's not audible.
Uh, Pranam, Swami Maharaj ji, can I ask a question? Though I am
Yes.
not Hindu, can I appear?
Ah,
I am in the
yes.
hospital. Though I am in the hospital, I am very much interested. Pranam Maharaj ji,
No, okay.
and good afternoon to everybody. Uh, I am very impressed by your lecture, Swamiji. And you spoke about Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, and it was very, very clearly understood by me. I have one question while you are speaking about detachment. Uh, I remember reading Lord Buddha left his family and he went out to seek the universal truths. So, detachment, does it include detachment from family relations also? This is my question.
Okay. Okay. So one can take up the issue of detachment at different stages of life. So what Buddha did may not be meant for all. This question was raised to Sri Ramakrishna himself. He said, "See, if we are in a family mode of living, there is no need to give up this and immediately run away from that. But we can practice internal detachment." He gives the example of a nurse or a maid servant working in a house looking after the children. She says, my son, let's say his name is Hari. She says, why my Hari, or my John, or somebody. And then she takes care of the child very well. But once, for some reason, her employer is not happy with her and tells her to go out, so your services are no longer needed, she just goes away. She is detached from inside. So, in the same way, we must learn to detach ourselves from the things of the world. We must carry on whatever we are doing, because we cannot simply jump into that state which we might be perceiving today. So, let us go little by little. There are some people who can do external renunciation, and some people have to be doing the internal renunciation. But in either case, it's the inner detachment that matters. Is the inner detachment, not just the external thing. Buddha's going away and being in the jungle. Finally, he comes back to the world to give the jewels which he has gathered in his inner life, and he tells people to follow the middle path, the Madhya Pantha, and he tells them to follow the path of detachment, of service, and other virtues. So it's not always necessary that everyone should give up the external thing, but we must try to divinize our relationships. We must try to divinize our relationships. That's very important.
There was a question by Dr. Sarkar, Kalpana Sarkar. Maybe that voice was not audible. She had an interesting question, that is, how to.
I haven't finished.
Okay, please. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes,
uh,
sir.
Miss Kamal, please carry on.
Yes. Swamiji, being in a family means you will have all those feelings of fear, maybe anger, jealousy. So these negative emotions can be, I think, eradicated by meditation. Am I right, Swamiji?
Not only meditation, but cultivating certain attitudes towards life. So that's also very important. So meditation is we are meditating 15 minutes a day or half an hour a day, but throughout the day, what kind of feeling we carry with us. So that's very important. What kind of
I
attitude?
feel very insecure. I feel very insecure at night. Of course, praying helps to a certain extent. I leave everything in the hands of God, in His custody. So that helps a bit. But I have I suffer from a lot of a sense of insecurity
So
due
the
to various.
insecurity. You can try to feel the presence of a divine being around you or within you. So he's always there actually. We kind of have turned our focus away from that divine being. He's always there because by very definition in the Sanatana Dharma, the God is that which gives birth to us, which sustains us, and which into which we get dissolved finally. So there is no fear. We don't become fear that I'll become non-existent. There is nothing called non-existent. This present form may go away, but I finally dissolve in the Lord. It's just like you have got a uh, from water you make one shape, and that shape finally goes back to water again. Huh? It's not that it's not that we are afraid of water or we are afraid of losing our present shape. So that's a kind of a subtle attachment that we have. Yeah. So leave it to the Lord. When time comes, He will dissolve us. So as long as we are alive, let us offer ourselves. We try to feel the presence of the Lord in our life.
Thank you, Swamiji, and I hope to hear your lectures in future also, your sermons in future also. They are very motivating, very inspiring, and I'm feeling so happy. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Uh, Thank you, Maharaji. Thank you, Maharaji, for your very profound replies. And only we can end with the question and answer with Dr. Kalpana Sarkar's last question. Basically, what she highlighted, maybe some problem in hearing. Uh, what she was asking is that if we consider every person as God, the divine, so there is no difference between people. So how to do away with the difference? That is, she was giving an example. That is, her granddaughter says that why don't you eat food with your people who are your helpers in the house, domestic helpers. And domestic helpers are very reluctant to eat together. So she wants to kind of resolve this conflict. How she can kind of remove this difference.
So it's like this. We must remember one simple truth of life. Although we all are same, but there are differences in manifestation. So Sri Ramakrishna says, for instance, although there is same divinity present in all living beings, we don't go and hug a lion. So the in our manifestation, in our vyavahara, in our practical world, there will be certain differences. Look at our own body. So I can pour some hot water on my feet, some warm water. But a doctor will tell you never to pour hot water or warm water on your head. So there are differences. Likewise, this is called the idea of jati. Unfortunately, it has been translated as caste system. It's not the caste. Let us remove the caste idea from our understanding. It's the jati. Jati means genre. So there are genres, there are people. So each one has to behave in a particular way. But at the same time, in our heart of our heart, we should not forget the same divine is present in all of us. Whether higher or lower, whether lesser manifestation or more manifestation, it's the same divinity. Same Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati, says the Bhagavad Gita. So I think this idea that there is God in all and I can accept everybody, though philosophically it is true, but in practical sense we have to keep many things in mind. So as just as we don't go and hug a lion, or Sri Ramakrishna gives another example, although Apo Vai Narayana. So Sanskrit verse Apo Vai Narayana means water is God Himself. And yet some water is used for drinking, and some unclean water can be used for washing, and some not very clean water can be used for gardening. You can't take it up and drink it. So there are some differences in our manifestation in our day-to-day life. So we should have to remember both the things in mind, practicality as well as the philosophical truth.
Thank you very much, Maharaji. I think Dr. Sarkar, you got your answer.
Yes, Maharaj, I got it, but I saw in their house that everybody in their house sit in the same table when they take their lunch or any
Yes,
food.
yes. We are not saying that we should not sit. Of course, we can sit, but in a general sense, there are differences. There are differences, but I'm not emphasizing the differences. We in India, particularly, we have become more discriminative towards other people. So we should remove that discrimination of our mind, but we must be very practical also. That's the point.
And also they always respect any type of work as work, uh,
Yes,
which is lacking in us.
yes, true, very true. There's dignity of labor.
We have come to the end of the question and answer session. So now we will have one song, devotional song by Ranjana Di from Ghaziabad, Uttar Pradesh, and Dr. Ranjana Bhattacharya, the other namesake. I think today Ranjana Di from Chittaranjan Park, New Delhi is not there. And she was also supposed to sing a devotional song. So we start with Mrs. Ranjana Bhattacharya from Ghaziabad, Uttar Pradesh, and then in the meantime, if Dr. Bhattacharya comes, she can also sing, and then we'll end the program. Ranjana Di, you can start your devotional song.
पुनः महोदय प्रकृतिं परमां भयां वरदां नररूपधरां जनतापहरां शरणागत सेवक दोषकरीं शरणागत सेवक दोषकरीं प्रणमामि परां जननीं जगतां गुणहीनसुतान् पराधयुतान् कृपया धृतमोधर मोहगतां तरणीं भवसागर पार करीं तरणीं भवसागर पार करीं प्रणमामि परां जननीं जगतां विषयं कुसुमं परिरीत सदा चरणाम्बुरुहामृत शान्तिसुधां पिबभिन्नमनो भव
शतम् कृपां कुरु महादेवी श्रुतेषु प्रणतेषु च शरणाश्रयदानेन कृपामयी नमस्तुते रामकृष्ण रक्षापटाभृते नित्यं शारदे ज्ञानदायिके पापेभ्य नशदा रक्ष कृपामयी नमस्तुते रामकृष्ण गत प्राणां तन्नाम श्रवणा प्रियां तद्भावरञ्जिताकारां प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः पवित्रं चरितं यस्या पवित्रं जीवनं तथा पवित्रता स्वरूपिणे तस्यै कुर्मो नमो नमः देवीं प्रसन्नां प्रणतार्तिहन्त्रीं देवीं प्रसन्नां प्रणतार्तिहन्त्रीं योगीन्द्रपूजां युगधर्मपात्रीं तां शारदां भक्तिबीजनदात्रीं तां शारदां भक्तिबीजनदात्रीं दयास्वरूपां प्रणमामि नित्यम् स्नेहेन बदनासि मनो अस्मदीयं दोषानशेषान् शकुनीकरोषि दयशेषदोषान् दयशेषदोषान् त्वां गृहीत्वा यदिदं विचित्रम् प्रसीद मातर विनयेन याचे नीतं भव स्नेहवती श्रुतेषु प्रेमैकबिन्दु चिरदग्धचित्ते प्रेमैकबिन्दु चिरदग्धचित्ते विस्निं च चित्तं कुरुणा सुशान्तम् जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे त्वयोस्थित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः प्रणाम
Thank you so much, Ranjanadi, for the beautiful uh, song, Prakriting Paramam. And now, Atma Shraddhanandaji Maharaj has always been very kind, and he has supported us in so many ways. Now I would request our friend Hiranya Mukhopadhyay to kindly give vote of thanks to Atma Shraddhanandaji Maharaj.
Maharaj, Pranam. It always gives me enormous pleasure, Maharaj, and happiness to hear your lecture. So, what can I say, Maharaj? I offer our heartfelt pranam on behalf of all the disciples who are present here today. Thank you again, Maharaj. Pranam for this wonderful lecture. And we hope, as Nirmal said, we hope to hear you again soon. Thank you, Maharaj.
So, Maharaji, with your kind permission, we will end the program here. And we are so grateful to you, Maharaji. As always, you have been blessing us. And thank you so much. And now I would end the recording of the program. And please give me 30 seconds.
There is